So leadership is all about influencing yourself and others to do things differently than you would have before, to think differently. It's about controlling your thoughts. It's about ultimately influencing other people's behaviors to do things positively that they might not
Right.
have done otherwise. That's what I think about leadership. It's all about influence.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. Hands down, this is the most audacious podcast you'll find on the internet. And if you didn't know, now you do. I appreciate you for being here and taking some time, helping us continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us on our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can subscribe to our YouTube as well by hitting the notification bell down below, and that way you'll be connected to all good things audacious related. Now, I'm a big fan of the topic of leadership, but it's something I've studied for years. I remember launching a leadership podcast way back in 2012, and I'm as fascinated with it today as I was back then. And it's for this reason why I'm really pleased to have John Laurito join me on this edition of the podcast for a deep dive into the topic of leadership and how we all can be better leaders. You'll notice I said we all can be better leaders, and I meant it when I said it because I've always believed that every single one of us has that leadership potential inside of us, and a key starting point is understanding that leadership and recognizing there's a direct link between our individual behaviors and leadership. So it's not that what you're called that makes a difference, it's what you do. That's what makes you a leader. John's a great guy with fantastic perspective on the leadership topic, and much like myself, he believes where the potential lies within all of us. He's got a lot on his plate. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's a podcaster, and I'm telling you folks, it's a really, really great conversation that I think you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, I'm going to maneuver my way out of this and give you an opportunity to hear directly from John. Enjoy. John, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. Thanks for making the time and doing this.
You got it, Audley. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I gotta say, the topic of leadership, which is your bag, if you will, it's one that I appreciate, and I'm going to ask you maybe as a starting point, if you can kind of give me your definition of leadership. And the reason why I ask that is, and it's an interesting topic because I think people's understanding of leadership is based on kind of their experiences of it, and they it's something that's not all viewed the same way, which is different. Like a lot of things, people have a basic understanding. This is what this is, but for leadership, for whatever reason, it's slightly different. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely, Audley. So first, I'll say that it's people, I think, get the misconception that leaders are only people that are in specific roles that
Right.
have specific titles, and that's not the case. Everybody is a leader, truly everybody, because you're leading the most difficult person, and that's yourself. That's probably the most difficult person you're ever going to have to lead.
Right.
So leadership is all about influencing yourself and others to do things differently than you would have before, to think differently. It's about controlling your thoughts. It's about ultimately influencing other people's behaviors to do things positively that they might not have done otherwise. That's what I think about leadership. It's all about influence.
Influence, and that's a big one. And I do like the idea of influencing yourself, because most people, when they think of leadership, they automatically go to what I'm doing for others, and I've got to guide others, I got to steer, have the right answers, I've got to know all these things, and it is very much sort of almost self leadership first, if you will.
Absolutely, it starts with leading yourself. I mean, I've seen people that have not mastered leading themselves that then try to lead other people, and there's ultimately some lack of authenticity. I mean, people
Mm,
see through. If you've got gaps in how you're leading your own life, ultimately that's going to come across, and that affects your own influence of other people. People
right,
want to follow people that have figured things out a little better than they have. That's what
right,
tends to cause us to follow them. They're taking us to a place that we want to go. And hey, if I follow this person, if I follow Audley, he's going to show me and take me to places that I might not have otherwise gone. And
right,
they're looking at you first. So
right.
that is critical. And that's ultimately, that affects our happiness. I mean, there's a lot of people they're not happy in life because they're not, and it comes down to leadership. They're not leading their life in a way that's going to get them happiness and
Yeah,
achieve the things and the lifestyle and the relationships that are going to bring total
right,
happiness. So
right,
that's
right.
what I love about leadership, is it's all about that end goal, the pinnacle of life, which is becoming more happy.
And that's something that I don't think people automatically connect with. So I'm glad you talked about the happiness aspect of that, because there is a direct correlation. But again, it's so much, and I think of new leaders as an example, right? Your first time in a leadership role, you're automatically thinking, okay, I've got to do all these things that you're supposed to do, and not thinking about yourself or your happiness.
Absolutely. I talk a lot. In fact, earlier today, I was talking to somebody, a client of mine, and we were talking about the importance of how you start your day, and just that daily regimen or routine that gets you in the right frame of mind then puts you in a great place to then help other people and help them get in a good place. But if you miss that step and you don't start with yourself,
Right.
immediately start looking outward, you're missing the most important ingredient there. So absolutely, it definitely starts with yourself. And new leaders, I think you have to look inward, especially at
Yeah.
that point, because you're so concerned with how other people are viewing you,
Yes.
and you're thinking so much about other people in terms of their opinion and how are they going to take this and receive this.
Right.
And you got to start with managing yourself and leading yourself and getting yourself in the right frame of mind, and then
Yeah.
everything starts to come a little bit more naturally with leading other people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, things just kind of fall into place, so to speak. And but I actually want to go back to just the topic of new leaders for a moment here, because as much as people, like, and oftentimes we'll see in the world of work, employee A has mastered this task, and all of a sudden he's tapped to be a leader in a totally different job, a totally different realm, a totally different field, and like, this is your new job, which is totally different than what they were mastered.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's almost like learning on the job.
Yeah.
Like, let me figure this thing out, and along the ways, there's some bumps and there's some obstacles they got to figure out. But it is really, really tough. So I'm wondering, John, if you could perhaps identify so oftentimes what makes leaders successful, what makes a new leader successful?
Yeah, that's a great question, Audley. And I think one of the mistakes that new leaders make is it's trying to convince people that they need to listen to you. And here's the reason why, because I'm in this role, because I know what I'm doing. And it's all about making people getting people to perceive them in a certain way.
Mm,
And again, it's looking at things the wrong way. People need to understand that a leader cares about them. So people follow people because I'm going to follow you if I truly feel that you've got my best interest in mind. You really
right,
do care about where I'm going and what my success looks like. And if you're genuinely interested in understanding someone, and okay, what is going on? What's your world like right now? What are the obstacles that are in front of you? And where
right,
do you want to go from a career standpoint?
right,
New leaders that start with that approach in understanding their people have much higher likelihood of developing the right relationships and influencing people.
right.
It's not coming in with this, wielding this big stick and saying, hey,
I'm
I'm
the
in charge
boss.
now. It doesn't work. And sometimes temporarily that can work, that
Right,
does, but long term that doesn't work. People don't want to
right.
follow somebody like that. They want
Hmm.
to follow somebody who they really want to, support. They know that they support them. They want them to win as much as they want to win. That's the type of leader. So start with understanding your people,
Yeah,
understanding what their goals are, what's how do they see their role within the big picture and the vision, and what are the obstacles that they see in front. And
right.
and that's a great starting point for a new leader versus coming in and, hey, here's why I'm as great as I am and what I've accomplished, and here's my background and success.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes there's some insecurities around proving that I'm worthy of this position and I deserve to be here. And, I'm going to show you why, kind of a thing. The interesting thing we're seeing now is that the world of work is obviously it's changed. And I mean, the last couple of years has changed big time. But even generally, we're seeing changes away from the sort of command and control sort of mentality to more where employees wanted to choose who they would work for and wanted to know about the values and whether this person was worthy of, of me working for, if you will. That's really different. That's not, that's really, really different shift.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of that has to do, I mean, we're all living in these silos in some respect, especially when we're working virtually. We are connected through a computer screen or a phone or an email, and we don't have that personal interface as much, which helped to build the warm feelings and the feelings of connectedness.
Right.
So because of that, the leaders really need to go above and beyond and take the efforts to make people understand the bigger picture. It's not just about, hey, you do this task and get it done and get it done by this time, but it's really, how does my role connect within the big picture? What are we all trying to do here? And why is what I do important? There's 3 reasons that great people will stay with an organization. But if one of these 3 things doesn't exist, then they run the risk of going somewhere else where they can find these 3 things.
This sounds like a big secret here. I love this.
Yeah, and it's years and years of my own experience as well as working with tons of other leaders. And this is what it comes down to. Players, top people, want to be growing. They want to know that they're getting better and better. And part of that is they're getting stretched. They're getting opportunities to take on more responsibility, whatever's going to help them grow. Secondly, is they need to feel like they're making an impact and having some kind of positive impact, but not just any impact. They need to be feeling like they're really making the biggest impact that they know they can make. If they're only making a little bit, but they know they can make a big one, they're going to go somewhere where they can make a big one.
Gotcha.
And then third, they have to feel valued. They've got to feel like an important member of this team. And that's not always money. That's recognition. That's time that somebody, if a leader spends time with somebody, that's showing that he or she really appreciates and values this person. So those 3 things, when they're there, that's where you have the magic of building this A team.
That value, that making people feel valued. And it's funny because we talk about in the leadership in the professional sense, but these are the same things you can do in our own personal lives, John.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, that's what everybody wants, to feel valued and appreciated. They feel, and in our personal lives, if you think about those 3 things, they don't apply to just business. They do apply to life. I need to feel, I become happier when I feel like I'm growing and getting better. That helps me feel more confident. That helps me feel more assured, and my self-esteem goes up. My relationship skills go up. When I feel like I'm making an impact on other people, then their receptivity to me goes up. There's all kinds of things that happen personally when you feel those 3 things.
Amazing. I want to go back to influence. We sort of touched on that earlier on, but specifically our actions. So leaders are always under the spotlight, right? And everything that they do is scrutinized, magnified, and made available for the whole world to see, right? Yeah. If you could talk about the significance of the connection there between the actions and that influence, right? Because everything a leader does matters.
It does. The people are very smart, so they're looking to see when things don't make sense, so they can pick up very quickly if somebody's actions and words are differently. If they're saying one thing but they're really doing something differently, or they're not doing something that they're preaching others need to do. People pick up on that. And that's just one of these things that doesn't sit well with people and causes them to a little bit of a move in the opposite direction of influence. And I'm not as willing to follow this person. If they truly do line up and they're consistent with what they say and they communicate a lot and they explain things, I think one of the biggest issues that leaders oftentimes have is they're not as transparent as they need to be. And
Mm.
not everybody needs to agree with the decision that you make. Nobody ever is going to. And
No,
in
that's
fact,
right.
if
That's
a
right.
leader is looking to have that, then they're leading their peel-based leader, and that's not what you need to be as a true leader. But if people understand the rationale behind a decision, especially a tough one,
Yeah.
they're more
Yeah.
apt to get behind it. They may not like it, they may not agree with it, but they're more
They'll
apt
accept.
to support it because they
Yeah.
understand it and they respect the fact that you're being transparent and being authentic. I really I love this. There's I think a desire for more people because they realize the value of it to be more authentic, and all that really means is you're not trying so hard to do things for other people and how they really feel and try to please
Right.
everybody.
Right.
It becomes very inauthentic. When you're truly leading with the right goals in mind and the vision and trying to help people as much as you can and be yourself through that whole process and not try to be somebody that you're not, that's what people really respond to.
Yeah. And I think so my sense is that I think that sometimes it's not recognized how important that is, because leaders at times can be so focused on the task at hand. We've got this collective job to do. We've got this this mission we've got to achieve. But it's how you get there is as important as getting there itself, and I don't think that's always recognized.
It is, yeah, exactly. And people need to understand the big picture because we tend to see one pixel of information or one small interaction, and we draw these major conclusions and draw this whole picture based on that one little piece of information. And oftentimes that's misinterpreted. So people in an organization sometimes misunderstand what a leader is doing or what decisions are being made, and they don't
Right.
understand it, and which causes confusion and then ultimately sometimes resentment. So when leaders over compensate with extra and truly over communication, that helps to make everybody understand a little bit better
Right.
and
Right.
feel better. So if a leader was listening to
You just
this,
got to make the time for it, though, right? You just got to figure that. You just got to make the time for it, the extra,
you
which
do.
is the challenge.
You've got to think through, and if a leader listens to this and says, okay, what's the one thing I'm going to do differently?
Right.
Increase your level of communication.
Mm.
I've very rarely seen that not produce positive results.
Right.
And I'm going to even go as far as say most leaders don't communicate enough. Even though they think they might, they don't, because we think that people understand things when they don't. We think that they've heard a message when they haven't. We think that one email explained everything and the person read it top to bottom. They haven't. We just assume people know more than they really do. So a great leader, if they over communicate, I was talking to a leader the other day who said, I take every single meeting that I have with my team, and we start it by talking about the vision.
Wow.
And it gets maybe some redundancy sometimes, and some people are like, okay, we know this, but you can't talk about that enough, because when
Right.
things get tough and things get confusing or there's different things that are happening, people need to understand, okay, where are we going? And that type of level of communication just eliminates any kind of confusion and makes it really, really clear.
Got you. No, it is that over communication is a big one. And I like going back to the vision, because that's also a good reminder of what we're trying to do and why we're here. And it sort of lays the landscape, if you will, and helps people get focused. And yeah, you're right. There are some that be like, yeah, this again, and others will jump on board, right? So it's different.
Yeah, exactly.
For everyone. I wanted to talk about so leadership potential, and then you said earlier everyone has that leadership, those quality leadership within them, and so I'll tell you a quick story. My first run in with even the understanding the word, or not even fully understanding the word leadership, I probably was 12 or 13 years old. I was at this summer day camp, and there was another little kid he was younger than me, and they had so that what they did is a group moved kind of from one activity to the next. They had all the kind of kids kind of travel together, and there was this one little boy that he just kind of gravitated to me, so I held his hand and we went along, and he was a few years younger than me, and I'll never forget the camp counselor said, "You're showing some really good leadership skills." And I had no concept of what that meant at all. I felt like I was babysitting. Really, that's all it felt like in that moment. But it wasn't until years later that I kind of understood what was being referenced. And the ability to sort of lead and guide and influence is kind of what I took from that. But at that time, when we sort of talk about untapped leadership potential, right? It's so it's in everyone is really the point is, right? It's there. It's just got to be brought out.
And think about this, Audley. It's, what you did there is you made an uncomfortable situation for that boy a little more comfortable.
Right.
You gave somebody comfort. You helped them step outside their comfort zone. And that's what leadership is. I love stories, and I appreciate you sharing that. I'll share a story of the moment that I first figured out what leadership was. And I had no idea what it was until this moment. And this was back in high school. I played baseball. Okay. And I was a pitcher, and I was with batting. I either hit a home run or I struck out. Truly, like I always went for the fences, and I led the team in both in home runs and strikes.
I love it.
So I was fun to watch, but not necessarily the guy who wanted a clutch situation. So, long story short, we were in a clutch situation, bases loaded, 2 outs. I'm walking to the plate, and I am filling my head with all kinds of bad stuff. I'm saying to myself, I'm going to strike out. I'm going to strike out. This is ridiculous. I don't want to be in this situation. I was hoping the pitcher would hit me so I get a free base and we'd walk the one in. And I'm like, I don't want to be in this situation. I know I'm going to strike out. I'm going to let the team down. And my coach must have seen this. My body language was off. He called timeout. He was on third base coach. And so I walked over to him and my teammate who was on third at the time. And my teammate said, John, just hit the ball. I'm thinking, oh, well, geez, I didn't know it was that easy. Okay, great. But my coach said something that was perfect. Without skipping a beat, he just said, I know John's going to hit the ball, but listen, when you hit the ball, try and hit it to right field so we get 2 runs in, not just 1. And he said it so matter-of-factly and so confidently.
Right.
It instantly changed my mindset. And I said to myself, I am going to hit the ball. Coach knows I'm going to hit the ball. Of course I'm going to hit the ball. Let me try and hit it to right field. I walked to the batter's box with a totally different mindset, knowing I was going to hit the ball, saying I was going to hit the ball. Next pitch came in. Not only I didn't hit it to right field, I hit it over the center field fence for a grand slam. And it was a phenomenal moment. And I remember thinking to myself, I know I would have struck out had my coach not intercepted then. And he changed my thinking, which changed the outcome. He helped me do something in that moment that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And that was the moment I realized what this thing was, this magical thing called leadership. Wow. Like, how did he do that? And then I became almost obsessed with that. How do people influence the outcome like that? Whether it's yourself, if you can learn how to do that yourself, which I ultimately did, or learn how to help other people do it. And that's what kind of began my journey in leadership.
I love that story. And one of the things I stand on, I mean, obviously, so congratulations on getting that home run and winning the game. I mean, first and foremost, that's, priorities here. So congrats. But I think too, the ability to see and recognize that, like, for a leader, for in this case, the coach, to be able to see this is where I need to interject. Because sometimes, there are times when leaders do have to be all in and interject and guide, and other times they've got to ease back. And so, to be able to recognize that to me is, value, to be able to do that.
Exactly. You've got to have your eyes open and your ears open and pick up those moments, because they're quick, they're short little, that was a 20-second conversation. Yeah. That not only impacted the game and the outcome of that play, that moment, it impacted the game, but it impacted my life. It truly did. And I reconnected with him recently. I said, Coach, you have no idea. And he didn't even remember it.
That's right.
I'm like, you have no idea how much that impacted me. And it gave me confidence that moved forward in my life. It helped me figure some things out. It was amazing. So that's the power of leadership.
Yeah, and the fact that he doesn't remember, I think, is really speaks to it was just a natural thing for him, right? Like, John, how many times has someone said, you did this thing for me, and how much of a difference made, and you've got no clue. You've got no clue, right? Because you were just sort of, and I'm going to tie it into what you said, you were just authentically being yourself. You were just doing what becomes natural to you. You weren't thinking, the coach wasn't thinking, I know what I'll do. I'm going to go and tell John that this is what he's going to make a difference. He was just being natural. as we oftentimes are, and that's, I think that's the best space to be within, right? You're just naturally authentically being yourself.
Well, and you've got to know also what your people need at that moment. I didn't need coaching on how to hold the bat or keep my hands, or
Right,
I want to drive my hips in. He didn't need to tell me that.
right,
In that
right.
moment, he needed to fill my head with the right stuff. So, you're a great leader. Number one, to your point, they don't know, they don't go into it saying, "Hey, this is exactly what my plan is for this moment and how I'm going to impact the rest of this person's life." They're just trying to get those little tiny influential moments and change this little course and let the rest take care of itself. It's
Gotcha.
this little moment. What can I do to leave this person better than I found them? How can I just have them in this next few moments think differently, feel differently, do differently as
Amazing.
a result of our interaction that will help them moving forward? That's a great leader. And they do that a lot, and they don't even realize the impact they have sometimes.
That's amazing. It's amazing. I want to touch on your book and podcast, right? So let me get this. The book, Tomorrow's Leader: How the Best Leaders Become Better in a Fast Changing World. Being better, I think that's the starting point. Being better, that's an ongoing process. I would say that's fair to say, John. It doesn't. You don't. Take a course or you read a book and, hey, I'm a leader, I'm good, I'm done, move on, now let me lead my people. It's being better is an ongoing thing, isn't it?
It is. And it's not taking these huge leaps. It's really just trying to get 1% better every single week. That's what I talk about. If you can do that, you are going to be light years ahead of where you would be otherwise. And you get better. Sometimes you don't feel yourself getting better. You don't see the results of it, but
Right.
that doesn't mean you're not getting better. You just have to think about, okay, how am I getting more prepared? And nobody reaches that point of arrival. It's not like, okay, I'm done, I got
Yep.
it, now the
Yeah.
leader that I wanted to be. It's this
Right.
never-ending journey. You're right. You
Right.
can constantly get better because there's always new situations, new interactions, new environments that you're part of, that you're leading. And that's what makes leadership so great. You're never going to have all the answers. You're never going to do everything right.
Right.
You're always going to make some mistakes. It's just trying to get a little 1% better here and there. The best leaders, the so-called best leaders in the world, they still make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
They still scratch their head and say, "Wow, what was I thinking? Why did I say it that way?" Or why
Right.
did the best leaders are still making the same mistakes that all of us make. They just tend to do a little bit better in some situations, and they do it consistently.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
I would also think their recovery is a bit quicker as well too, in terms of recognizing that. So that conversation, oh gee, why did I do that? The better ones do that quicker and able to bounce back, let's say, because they've done it enough, right?
And they know it's not going to alter the course of any major things. They're still going to make mistakes. They know that making mistakes is going to be part of success. So when it happens, they say, okay, this was one of the mistakes that I knew I was going to make. I didn't know which one it was going to be or how big or when it was going to come, but I know it's just part of the journey. So they get past it a lot faster. It doesn't beat them down, and it doesn't change their emotional state, as much as it might when we're early in our careers.
Got you. John, what got you on this path? Because I mean, the topic of leadership is a fascinating one. And again, depending on your connection to it and your experience with it, it'll be different for everyone. So I'm wondering, sort of, what got you here?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated and like I said, obsessed with leadership. I spent 20 plus years leading financial services organizations, and all of those were different turnaround jobs. It was taking over a struggling organization and turning it into one at the top. And I figured out how to do that. And once I figured out how to do that, I did it multiple times in different situations. And I really was just excited about that whole transformation. And it was all about people. It's getting the right people doing the right things. It's
Right.
building an organization around great people. And when I saw the impact of what that makes on those people and the impact that those people can then make on other people, I thought, wow, this is really great. I really want to spend my time doing this in a broader way and impacting more people. To my point earlier, I knew I was making an impact when I was leading organizations of financial services, but I wasn't making as big of an impact as I knew I could make. I knew that I could impact people all over the place, all over the world in reality. And that's what led me to do this. So 2 years ago, almost to the day, it was February 20th of 2020, 3 weeks before the pandemic, is when I left my great, secure steady pay job in corporate America and went off on my own and started my own business.
Well
And
planned. You planned that well.
exactly. But I look back and I'm like, that actually was the best time. I didn't know
Yeah.
it at the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't know. We look back and it's easier to look back and say, yeah, that was great. It turned out phenomenally well. At the moment when the pandemic hit, like everybody else, I was panicked. I was thinking, okay, wait a sec. What did I do? Why did I do this now?
Yes.
And I didn't know it at the time, but there was a reason why I did it now. And it helped me help a lot more people. It helped me do the things even in a broader scale that I thought I could do.
Right.
And it's turned out to be fantastic.
Amazing, amazing, and then of course I mentioned your podcast as well, which is another good opportunity for you to. So listen, as a fellow podcaster, I gotta give you that opportunity to sort of talk about your platform there.
Yeah, it's funny. I got into it almost by mistake. I had a friend tell me, you got to do a podcast. I'm thinking a podcast. I don't even know how to do. I have not a clue, and he led me through it.
That's usually the case,
and it was great. And I started doing it. I've now done. I think it's closing in on 300 episodes. And I try to get 3 episodes out a week. I will say some weeks are easier than others, but
yes.
What it is, it's stories. I tell leadership stories. If people like stories, it's so much of it is a story combined with a concept and an idea, and just about leading themselves better and leading other people better. I've got a wide audience of people in 66 different countries that listen, and they're in all different spots of life and looking at it for different reasons. I have great guests on and sharing their stories. So some episodes are 5 minutes, some are 20 or 30. It varies, but a lot of them are quick little hits of leadership, a little leadership nugget.
Good. Well, I again, I appreciate that, and I can understand the work that goes into. I don't think people unless you're doing. I don't think you fully understand the level of detail and work and effort that goes into even a 5-minute episode, right? So, congratulations. Last thing I want to ask you about, John, before we get out of here, and I said again, I do appreciate the time. The chat has been phenomenal and very enjoyable. This is the Audacious Living Podcast. I think it's only fitting that we talk about the significance of leaders being bold and audacious in their actions and in terms of having an impact. I think all these things are correlated. I wonder if you sort of touch on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that word audacious because it means so much. It's just when you know that you can impact other people and you feel this general or very specific sense of purpose, and it's a big purpose. It's okay. I want to help this person or these people be a little bit better as a result of our interaction. It allows you confidence to do things you might not have otherwise have done before. And that's where you take chances. You do things that might involve some risk. Maybe it's how somebody's going to receive something, or are they going to like something, or I'm going to take this step. I'm going to leave my job and start what I know I really have a purpose for. And that's the audacity, I think, in leadership. And that, in my mind, that's how you live life. I mean, you've got great things ahead. Most of us don't regret the things that we did and didn't turn out the way. It's most of the regret comes from the things we never did. We thought about, never did it. So I didn't want to be 70, 75 years old looking back, or 80 or not 100, looking back and saying, boy, I should have done this.
Right.
Should have done that.
Right.
I'd rather have tried and not succeeded and at least tried than never have tried at all.
I love that. I think that's a great point to conclude on. Taking risks, taking chances, and living regret-free. I think that's a fantastic point. You've done what you've thought about doing. What if I had started, in your case, what if I didn't start my leadership journey because I had a safe, comfortable job? What would my life look like? So, eliminate all that and take that risk. Now, there's calculated risks we can take. There's those ways you can go about doing that. No one's saying you jump in head first in the water right away all the time. Sometimes you can, but other times it's got to be that calculated risk, and that's okay. But take it nonetheless. And I think that's really where the point here, and I'm glad you raised that.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Yep.
For our audience, if they wanted to catch up with you, John, or learn more about your work or your book or the podcast, where can we send them?
Easiest way is my name is my website. So it's johnlaurito.com, and they can get and that's JOHNLAURITO.com. They can get everything from my podcast to the book to info on me. I do speaking events and coaching and consulting, all kinds of stuff, and they can get to it and see it all there.
Awesome. Well, I certainly, well, first off, congratulations on making the leap, taking that chance, and getting to the point you are. You are living regret free, and that's important. And thanks for being here, John. It was such a great chat. Really enjoyed this, and I think our listeners are going to walk away with some really neat insights on leadership as a whole. So thank you.
Thanks, Ollie, and congrats on what you're doing. I love how you just run the show. You're a great interviewer, great conversationalist, and you know your stuff. So you got another listener here that's going to be tuning in.
Much appreciated. Thank you, John. Be well.
You got it. You too.
Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to John for joining me and offering up some cool insights on the topic of leadership and leadership development. I super appreciate his points around self-leadership, and I also love that, the final point we had around living regret-free as we sort of closed out our convo there. It's such an important way to live our lives free of regrets, free of doubts, all that good stuff. So thank you again for that, John. Be sure to check out both his book and his podcast. His book is called Tomorrow's Leader: How the Best Leaders Become Better in a Fast-Changing World, over at johnlaurito.com. That's his website. So be sure to head over there. When I reflect on my convo with John, and I think of all the great things we talked about, there's one thing that comes to my mind, and it would be this. If we solely define a leader as someone who's in charge of a company or a team or a political party, then the notion that anyone can become a leader is a difficult concept to fully accept. But if we were to break it down into the core elements of leadership, you'll find that everyone has the qualities that leaders possess right inside them. Oftentimes, the difference is that not everyone encounters the exact same set of circumstances in life where those qualities can really shine, or be recognized, or even put into practice. Those core elements of leadership start with us, and that's what makes self-leadership such an important topic, because it challenges individuals to recognize, develop, and constantly improve their own audacious leadership qualities. And once you've done that, you can put them into a positive use every single day after that. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com, and you'll be alerted every single time we've got brand new content that comes out. We've reached the end of another episode of the Audacious Living Podcast, and always gotta send out a big shout out to our lovers of audaciousness. I really appreciate the ongoing support that you give us here on the podcast. It really, really is tremendous and appreciated. So thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audacious Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.